What's good, YouTube, man? We back with another reaction video. We about to react to a timeline of Mike Tyson's insane career. So all my boxing fans, tap in. All my boxing subs, tap in. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It's the best sports reaction channel on YouTube, man. We trying to get this channel to 10K subs. I just hit 5,000 subs last week. So my next goal is to get to 6K. Then get to 7 and get to 8. You know what I'm saying? So once we get to 10, we just gonna let it go from there. But yeah, man, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Only take one second to hit it. A lot of people be forgetting to hit the subscribe button, man. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We about to hop right into it, man. Let's get it.
The baddest man on the planet is a saying reserved for the unanimous heavyweight boxing champions. But lately, it's mostly used for UFC heavyweights. However, there was no person on earth who embodied the baddest man on the planet more than Mike Tyson in his prime. Iron Mike was dangerous for everybody around him, both in and out of the ring. How good was Mike Tyson really? What are some lesser-known details about his career? And how does he fare in the boxing GOAT debate? Find out in the rest of the video. Tough upbringing and start of boxing career. Tyson grew up without a father in a rough neighborhood, but he wasn't in any way violent or problematic. He was a plump kid who wore glasses and was often teased for his pitched voice and was once sexually abused as a child. All Mike cared about was his flock of pigeons, which he fed every day. At the age of 11, Mike was already really strong, and when an older kid killed one of his birds, he snapped and beat up the bully, which finally earned him respect in the streets. That's when everything changed in his life.
Somebody killed one of his birds.
He used that newfound reputation and joined the local gang. By the age of 13, he got arrested more than 30 times, mostly for theft and violence. He'd probably end up dead or in jail if it weren't for Bob Stewart, who was Mike's counselor in a correctional facility. Stewart was a former amateur boxing champion who saw potential in Tyson and persuaded him to channel his raw strength into boxing and not beating people in the street for money. After a few months, Stewart introduced Tyson to Cus D'Amato, who will soon become the most important person in Mike's life. D'Amato was a celebrated coach who trained former heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson and light heavyweight champion Jose Torres. But he was also an aging coach who had already turned 70 and wasn't going to be hired by a championship caliber fighter anymore. And that's why D'Amato and unbridled 14-year-old Tyson were made for each other. Cus needed a new project, and in addition to being a much-needed father figure in Tyson's life, Coach D'Amato developed a style that perfectly matched the physiognomy of the explosive but relatively short Tyson. Mike was undersized as a heavyweight at 5'10", with a 5'11" reach, but on the other hand, he was extremely fast and built like a tank. Cus's peekaboo style suited Tyson perfectly because he had a low center of gravity and was as strong as they come. Tyson's matches in the first phase of his career were a textbook example of peekaboo developed to perfection. With hands in front of his face, his chin low, dipping and weaving where the opponents couldn't reach him, made Tyson almost impossible to hit, and he could counter with arguably the strongest uppercut in boxing history. Mike trained hard and studied boxing extensively, and even though he was still a teenager, his body was almost fully developed. He often fought against older guys and usually knocked them out cleanly after a few rounds. As an amateur, he won the Junior Olympics twice in 1981 and 82, but still failed to qualify for the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, and then decided to go pro. On March 6, 1985, he had his first professional fight at the age of 18. His opponent, Hector Mercedes, lasted less than 2 minutes before he fell down.
That boy Mike was
$500 for the fight. Realizing what kind of heavy artillery Mike possessed in his hands, D'Amato had him box very often. By the end of his first year as a professional, Mike's record stood at 15-0, with only one fighter surviving to see round 3. But his fairy tale came to its first turning point. In late 1985, Cus D'Amato passed away, the only real support Tyson had had in his life up to that point. Although the coaching part of the job did not suffer, since Tyson was taken over by D'Amato's assistant Kevin Rooney, the mentor and a father figure disappeared from Mike's life. Many people, including Tyson himself, consider this a crucial moment in his career and life. When Cus died, I was left without direction. After that, my real problems started. Youngest champion ever.
Damn, man. That boy Mike was going through a rough-ass life, dude. That's crazy.
Money, fame, and troubles. Tyson had a meteoric rise and already had 27 fights before he got his title shot in less than 2 years since his pro debut. Only on 2 occasions, his opponents survived to see the end of the last round, but they were completely beaten up as a result. On November 22, 1986, at the age of 20, Tyson became the world's youngest heavyweight boxing champion by defeating Trevor Berbick. The fight lasted just 5 minutes and 35 seconds, during which Berbick was knocked to the floor 3 times. With his victory, Tyson delighted the public, and journalists did not waste time comparing him with the greatest champions in the history of the heavyweight category. With a belt around the waist and 26 knockouts in 28 matches, in which he wasn't even challenged too hard, Iron Mike was in full force. His physical appearance was frightening, and so were his attitude and performances, and he instantly became a star. When he made his ring walk in the legendary black shorts and shoes with no socks, with a single ominous tone as the walkout song, he would instill fear in the whole arena, let alone the man he was fighting. In 1987, Tyson unified 3 heavyweight belts, and his rise to the title of the undisputed heavyweight champion was movie-like, and he had the whole world at his feet. He was dominant in the ring. He had great managers that set him up for millions pouring into his bank account. And in 1988, he married actress Robin Givens, then one of the most desirable women in the world. However, the various detours were slowly taking shape, and his demons were starting to make a public appearance. Tyson lived a debauched lifestyle that was not suited for an athlete, and he soon began to crumble. He divorced Robin, his manager Bill Caton left him, and the infamous Don King came in his place. Mike was often partying, drinking, and using drugs. He crashed several expensive cars and tried to kill himself. Still, he continued to win, and his young body still withstood his auto-destructive habits.
Crazy.
He was far from clean. I used a fake penis that worked extremely well for drug tests. It contained someone else's urine. Of course, you just have to hope that the urine is clean, Tyson admitted years later.
That's
he was
crazy.
never caught during his career, even though he was a cocaine addict for years and a heavy marijuana smoker. However, he said he never used steroids or any other PEDs, which we believe him. Since he was brutally jacked and ripped even as a young teenager, he indeed was just a freak of nature.
Thanks.
What was particularly impressive is the strength of Tyson's neck, which was key to his stability and apparent invulnerability. His neck muscles were so strong that they successfully absorbed hard blows to the head, paired with a killer punch, explosiveness, mobility, and having a great coach in his corner.
Boy, Mike
began to look
was crazy.
invincible in the eyes of the world and himself. After he won the title, he convincingly defended it 9 times, which is still the 3rd longest reign for a heavyweight champion of the world. By the year 1990, his record stood at 37-0, with 33 knockouts, 17 of them in the first round. At the age of 23, with just 4.5 years in professional boxing, Tyson was considered the most dominant human who ever put on a pair of gloves. Mike had become so dangerous that bookmakers stopped making offers for his fights. When he was supposed to fight Buster Douglas in Tokyo in February of 1990, only one casino in the US offered the odds for the
was
match.
serious.
The Mirage in Las Vegas rated Tyson as a 42-1 favorite. And if you would put $100 on Tyson, you would only win $3 back
That's
if
crazy.
he won. The biggest upset in boxing history.
Buster Douglas.
I didn't want to fight. All I was interested in then was partying and women. Tyson recalled his mood on the plane to Tokyo on January 8, 1990. He was 15 pounds overweight, out of shape, and out of focus. Upon arriving in Japan, Tyson continued with his drunken orgies and never took Douglas seriously. The general public had the same perception, and everyone thought that they were going to see another quick beating. When the fight started, Douglas's corner shouted, "Ain't no iron in Mike." Tyson barely moved, and his punches didn't land. And it was Douglas who was controlling the fight with his right jab. After 5 rounds of right-handed shots, Tyson's face was severely swollen. His corner was so arrogant that they came with no equipment to help the swelling subside, and Tyson's left eye began to close. The boxing saying says the most dangerous punches aren't the strongest, but the ones you don't see. And Mike Tyson could no longer see Douglas's strongest punches.
Right.
All Mike could do was remove the opponent from the ring with one punch. It finally happened at the very end of the 8th round, with a desperation uppercut from Tyson. Douglas was finally where everyone expected him to be, on the ground.
That's crazy.
The tape delay showed that Buster spent more than 10 seconds in the knockdown, and Tyson should have won the fight if the count started on time. Despite the long get-up, Douglas really seemed ready to continue the match, and his legs were not shaken. A round later, the champion's eye was completely closed. 2 rounds later, he was trying to find his mouth guard on the canvas. He fell after a series of clean strikes by Douglas, and Tyson's blind stare on his knees is still one of the most mesmerizing scenes in heavyweight boxing. Buster Douglas was the new WBC, WBA, and IBF champion, and after the match, Tyson blamed the referee for counting poorly, but that didn't help him. He told the real truth after his career was over. "I didn't care anymore. I no longer felt cuss inside me. Boxing was no longer important to me. No one got up after I knocked him down. Buster did it."
Right.
Rape allegations, prison, and return to boxing.
Damn.
After the first loss of his career, everything went downhill for Tyson. He did win his next 4 fights, and looked like he was poised for a shot to regain his titles, but he would be denied by circumstances outside the ring. Tyson was arrested in July 1991 for the alleged rape of 18-year-old Desiree Washington. 6 months later, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with 4 more on probation. "There's a lot of things I could have gone to jail for, and I deserve to go to jail for," he said, "but this wasn't one of them. I didn't do it, and I will never admit doing it." While serving his sentence, he converted to Islam and took a new name, Malik Abdul Aziz, and after 3 years, he was released from prison for good behavior. Upon his release, he quickly returned to the ring. His first opponent was Peter McNeely in August of 1995, whom Tyson easily defeated in only 89 seconds. The next year, he had 3 more victories, and neither fight went past round 3. He won back 2 of his heavyweight belts in a dominant fashion, and everyone was pumped to see Iron Mike back in his usual form.
Iron Mike.
Mike was then ready for some unfinished business, and a big fight against Evander the Real Deal Holyfield. Even though he was the former heavyweight champ, Holyfield was listed as 25-1 underdog because everybody started believing in Tyson's invincibility again. Holyfield had other ideas. Just like Douglas, he did not cave in, and did not appear to be the least bit intimidated by the quote-unquote baddest man on the planet. Due to a height, reach, and weight advantage, Holyfield dominated much of the fight, and he actually bullied the big bully. After he landed several big punches, Evander finally knocked Tyson out in the 11th round, after which the defeated Mike angrily accused him of illegal headbutts and demanded a new fight. He was given the opportunity on June 28, 1997, and in a new fight, a moment occurred that would forever mark Tyson's career and be remembered by generations to come. In the 3rd round of the fight, Tyson bit off a part of his opponent's right ear and was immediately disqualified. He was stripped of his boxing license and paid a $3 million fine.
That's crazy.
I really wasn't interested in boxing. I know I was wrong to bite his ear, but that has nothing to do with sports. I didn't even think when I bit him. I was drugged. I didn't train for that match at all. I should have been home with my family, not in that ring.
That boy Mike was crazy, bro. God damn. You gotta add, though.
The last big fight, and a few more shipwrecks. Tyson returned to the ring in 1999, but even though he won 4 more fights, he was no longer that arrogant and aggressive Mike. He had problems with weight, drugs, and law. However, due to his big name, reputation, and promoter interest. Problems with weight, drugs, and the law. However, due to his big name, reputation, and promoter interest, he secured a title fight against Lennox Lewis on June 8, 2002. In a fight that would bring him the unification of all the heavyweight belts once again, Tyson looked uninspired and powerless. Lennox Lewis did not give him the slightest chance, dominating the fight from beginning to the end, until he knocked Tyson out in round 8. At the time, it was the most watched boxing match in history in terms of pay-per-view sales, and Tyson admitted that he wanted that fight strictly for the payday, which would be his only motive for the rest of his fighting career. After Lewis, he knocked out Clifford Etienne in the 1st round, which would be his last boxing highlight. He lost his final 2 bouts, where he looked nothing like his champion self, after which he called it quits in 2005. Legacy. Even though the best years for heavyweights usually happen after the age of 25 and last into their 30s, it was the complete opposite for Tyson. His peak happened from the age of 20 to 24, and even just based on those 4 years, there are many people who say that Tyson is the best heavyweight who ever lived. There will always be a huge
Facts, if he was like focused,
Tyson. He was
that could have been scary,
the
bro.
most talented heavyweight ever. If he hadn't been taking drugs and
Facts.
drank all the time, if he was mentally stable and didn't go to jail,
He did that off all
probably
talent,
could have
bro.
dominated another
He wasn't even
decade
working
of
hard as
heavyweight
fuck. I'm pretty sure he was
boxing.
working
But
hard,
his
but
legend
damn.
and his story wouldn't be complete without all the bad stuff that accompanied his career, for which he became the most interesting and charismatic boxing champion ever, alongside Muhammad Ali. Even to this day, for those who have watched
That
him
boy
fight,
Mike was above
he remains
fucking
the
bad.
true
God damn,
baddest
man.
man.
Coach shit. But yeah, if y'all enjoyed that, man, make sure y'all drop a like, drop a comment. If you're a new watcher, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate y'all. We going up, man. We trying to get to 10K subs. That being said, man, we gonna wrap this video up. Y'all stay safe, stay tuned, and we out.